Welcome to Sales Accelerators, Winning Strategies for Financial Professionals, an educational webinar series that explores the latest tools and concepts to help boost your sales performance and drive business growth. Join us as we analyze trending topics in life insurance, investigate the latest headlines, and discuss solutions to accommodate your clients' unique needs. Please welcome your host, Kurt Fasen, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Sales Accelerators. This is the webinar series where we deliver quick, practical insights that you can put to work right away. Now today we're going to focus on a true power skill, managing your time, running your practice more intentionally and finding the right balance in your workload and protecting your time and your energy. To guide us in this conversation, I'm excited to welcome Cathy Gray, Assistant Vice President, Lincoln Financial Center for Professional Development. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kurt.
Absolutely. Well, now before we go any further, I'm just going to remind everyone. Now, if you're watching the podcast, take out your webinar action plan. Now, if you're driving and listening to this, try to make some mental notes. But here's what I want you to do. As we move through today's discussion, think about situations that Cathy mentions or particular times when you've experienced the concept that she's talking about. Then after the program, take time to examine some of the opportunities where you might be able to put into practice these skills that you're going to learn today. All right, well, let's get started. Now, you're going to be talking today about the art of saying no, which, if I understand this correctly, it's 3 strategies for setting parameters with others, yet also meeting their needs. Essentially, what it sounds like is it's a yes, more or less with guardrails. Now, I was talking to our producer, and my understanding is recently you were at one of our workshops, our Women's Elite Study Group that DBS hosts every year. And so we've designed our discussion today really to be an extension of that and actually go a bit deeper. And I also want to be something for everyone, whether or not you were at the study group or not, that everybody can put into practice today. Now, the workshop that we did with you, thank you, was very well received. And I think it's going to be really interesting to take a glimpse into the materials. So before we get to the questions, Cathy, maybe you could cover just why people say yes to everything, or provide a framework about the psychology behind all of this.
Yes, Kurt. So, it's so funny because even though I love the brain, I am not a psychologist or a neuroscientist. So where's my credibility in this topic even come from? It's experience. It's mistakes. It's from being a recovering people pleaser, quite frankly. I think of a couple major examples that stick out as I reflect on this old identity of myself to help and please and be nice. And one was about 10, 11 years ago. We were in an all-day team meeting, multiple coworkers, relatively same level. And the leader at the time kind of scanned the room and locked eyes on me and said, "Hey, Cathy, could you take the meeting notes for our team meeting all day and summarize it and send it out afterwards?" And in my head, I'm screaming, no, why am I going to be the one taking all of these notes all day? And, can't other people do the same? But I open my mouth and the words that come out is sure. Because again, I didn't know how to say no, respectfully. And then another, situation, this was a more personal situation in my personal life. At the time, my oldest was going into kindergarten, right? So he's 12 now. So this was relatively about 7-ish years ago. And it was my first PTA event, my parent teacher association event. I wanted to meet people, and the president is talking about this biggest fundraiser of the year, pizza bingo, and she scans the room and locks eyes on me and says, we're looking for a chair for this event, Cathy, and you would be perfect. What do you say? And in my head, I'm thinking, I have 3 children, not sleeping. I'm not sleeping. I'm leading a team at work full time. There's no possible way I could lead this event. I open my mouth and sure comes out. So, you just think about those moments. I'm also a professional business coach, and I've coached countless professionals who also share that same, frustration. Like, why can't I say no? I don't know what to say no to. So, kind of a little bit of the psychology behind why we say yes when really we want to say no and we know we should be saying no. One is called the acquaintance trap. This is by definition, 80% of the people that we're interacting with on a daily basis fall under what's called an acquaintance, right? It's really easy to say no to your mom, or it's really easy to say no to a stranger, but your community, your neighbors, your stakeholders, your boss, your peers, those are the folks where you don't want to damage your relationships. You don't want to damage your reputation. You want to be seen as, helpful. And those, that's the hardest group of people to say no to. The other psychology tidbit, I call it, is the spotlight effect, where for whatever reason, we conjure up this idea that a crowd of people are watching us. And even if it's a one-on-one situation, when someone asks us to do something, we think that there's like all these eyes watching us, when in reality, they're not. Another psychology tidbit is this idea of resource slack. It's a business term, but it's really the amount of a resource that's available. So we as humans kind of tend to look at time in a weird way. We're like super crunched for time today, but the future is vast and abundant, right? Our calendars are empty later. So we say yes to these advanced requests, when in reality, we have to say, we are going to be just as busy today as we are in the future. And, ask yourself an actionable tip is, would I say yes to this if I had to make time in my calendar tomorrow to do this? Right. And if it's a reluctant yes, then it's probably a no. And then finally, it's just that identity piece. I know I saw myself as the people pleaser, the nice girl, like the one who's helpful, the one who can get it all done. And sometimes we have to kind of let go of that identity and think about the type of person we want to be.
Cathy, I had to smile as you're going through that, because I found myself in those stories right along next to you. I mean, it is so true. It happens. It really happens to all of us. And I genuinely am excited to hear how this unfolds, because I think all of us, including myself, we're victim of this from time to time. So I think this is where the art of saying no comes in. So let's start with the A. I believe the A is important in the art of saying no.
Yeah. So, I say you need 3 things to master the art of saying no. ART. So, to your point, let's start with the A, and it stands for awareness. And this is not, calendar management and time management. This is about like identity management, right? Who's the person you want to be in the future? Who's the advisor that you're trying to work towards? Because every yes is a commitment, and every yes is it's what's funding the future you. So we just need to, again, be more aware of what are our priorities, what are our values, what is aligning to business goals that we have, and really taking the time to do that reflection. And there's a model that I built. It's called your time value model, and it really has 2 different dimensions. One is time. How much time is this ask or request going to take? And time can be how much time, effort, resources, money is this going to, take from me? And then value. How is the world benefiting from me doing this? Is this tapping into my unique strengths, my unique skills? And so as you think about it, every yes that you commit to will fall and, live in one of these categories. And there's 4 different categories, as you'll see. The categories that we really, really want to make our yeses live is the hero's journey category and the pass the salt category. So let me start with pass the salt and give you an explanation. These are situations, asks, requests where the time it takes, the resources, the money is low, right? It's not going to be a huge amount of effort on your part, but the value that it brings to the world, to that client, to the asker, is very, very high. So Kurt, if we're at a dinner party and Kurt, you say, Cathy, can you pass the salt? I pick up the salt shaker, pass it to you, Kurt, and theoretically it's changed your meal for the better. It was hugely, impactful. Those are the yeses that we want to focus on. Not a lot of effort, not a lot of time, not a lot of money, but making a huge impact on the person and the world, that asked. So we want to say yes to those pass the salt. The other category in, high value, the world is benefiting, the person is benefiting, but it's also going to be a lot of time or effort or money or investment. And again, this is called the hero's journey. It must align to your purpose. It must be a journey that you want to go on. You may need to qualify with a couple questions to ensure that it is a journey that you want to take on. But theoretically, these are the situations, the high impact situations. Maybe it's a high stakes meeting with a prospect, or a high stakes prospect. Maybe it's building a relationship with a center of influence or a strategic partnership. Those are the opportunities that you want to invest in and say yes to. And so if you want to allocate your yeses to those categories, we want to stop saying yes to two other categories, which you'll see is one of them is bake your famous lasagna. And I credit Dr. Vanessa Patrick on all of these words. She has a great book called The Empowered Refusal. But she says, hey, all right, you're going to an office potluck. And Kurt, let's just use you again as an example. And you say, hey, Kath, you make a delicious lasagna. Can you bake it and bring it to the office potluck? And I don't know what to say in the moment. And I say, sure, because that's obviously my strategy lately. And then I have to go home and I have to, figure out the recipe. And then I have to go to the store and I have to buy all the ingredients and it costs money. And then I have to go in the kitchen and cook it and bake it and then let it cool down. And then I have to wrap it up and bring it to the office. And then I get to that party, that office potluck, and everyone bought store-bought stuff. So did they like my lasagna? Was it delicious? Sure. But did I have to do that? No. I could have just went to the store, bought a, pre-made lasagna, and everyone would have been totally happy with it. So as you're thinking about your own life and situations where maybe you're placing a higher value on these requests, or you think people really are appreciative of all of your effort, maybe you're over preparing for a lower stakes meeting. Maybe you're customizing reports for, again, an internal meeting that, yes, it's nice, but it's taking up a lot of your time, your effort, and your energy. So we want to start saying no to those types of requests and asks. And we also want to take some time to think about the final category, which is called waste your time, a waste of time category, low value, and ultimately low time, but theoretically they're unnecessary. So maybe you're doing some administrative tasks that are wasting your time. Maybe there's meetings that there's no clear, goal in the meeting, that really we probably don't even need to have that, meeting. Maybe you're doing tasks that are outside your scope because you may not trust others to do them, right? So we want to start delegating. And again, every yes is a commitment, right? You think about like credit and debit, like every yes is now like a debit. You have to do it. Whereas a no is a credit. You could use it, for any other, opportunity.
That is so helpful, and it really helps when you frame it that way in those four categories. It really makes the person, at least made me, step back and really think through, where am I saying yes, and what value is that truly bringing. So now let's move on. So AR, let's move to the R. talk about where the R fits into your strategy.
Yeah, so once you have awareness of your values, your priorities, the identity that your future self would be proud of, you can set the R, which is rules. And the whole idea here is we don't want to make on the spot decisions, right? We want to enhance the quality of our decision making and what we're saying yes to. So I want you to think of these rules not as, barbed wires where we're not letting anyone in. I want you to think of them as velvet ropes. These are the ropes that you might see at a theater or in a grocery store where they give voice to your values, your priorities. They protect your time and capacity. And there's two different types. So again, these are rules that we're kind of setting for ourselves that ultimately help us when we're making decisions and helping us in two situations. One, when people ask us to do something or invite us, somewhere, an event, we want to be able to be better prepared to respond to those types of requests, right? So we want to set some rules for ourselves, and I know we'll kind of talk about what could those rules sound like. But the other would be personal policies, rules that you could set for yourself that help you stay aligned on the path that you want to be on, that align to your values, align to your priorities. So, again, two different types of rules. One's to help you with those outside requests, and then one is to really help you personally in staying on the path that you choose.
So that makes sense, Cathy. Would you say there are some words that a person would use or not use when thinking about those velvet ropes, if you will?
Yes, I would say words to use when you're developing these rules would be more absolute words. And Kurt, so for example, words like I don't, I only, I never, my policy is, my process is. So those are words that are more standing, they're more firm, and we want to sort of lose these powerless words like I can't, I shouldn't, I want to. So those are the words where, and I'll give you a couple examples so you can kind of feel the difference. Those are words that can sound like excuses. They can invite negotiation. So for instance, if I really want to stop taking phone calls after 7 o'clock at night, I could say, "Oh, I really shouldn't take calls after 7. Or you use powerful words. I don't take calls after 7 p.m. Or if you're really trying to be consistent in a workout, I shouldn't skip my workout versus I don't skip my workout.
Mhm.
Oh, I can't waive my fees. No, I don't waive my fees. So not necessarily what you might say to someone. We'll go through that in the third step. But these are rules that you're setting for yourself to help you not make on the spot decisions. And they really help give voice to what is critically important and really give voice to what makes you indispensable.
That really, really helps. As you lay it out in that manner, it's so much clearer that decisive nature that you're using. You're right. It shuts down the whole notion of negotiation or boy, they're just not willing to help. Instead, you probably even raise the level of respect with the person you're interacting with because you're using those very decisive, absolute words. Your person of integrity. I don't take calls after 7. I've got family time or whatever it is. I think
And
that's great.
so, Kurt, one thing as you were talking, I was thinking, we all have a to-do list in our life. Probably everyone who's watching. How many of us have a to-don't list? And let's sort of, help make these velvet ropes be our to-don't list.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. All right, let's keep moving. ART, we're at the T. So talk about the last step in your process.
So T stands for tactful communication skills, right? So we want to leave conversations better than we found them. We want to ensure that we maintain those strong reputations and relationships. So this is how we are saying yes, and how we're saying no, because even though this is called the art of saying no, I truly believe we never ever want to say the word no. No's an icky word. And so how do we say no without ever using the word no? So I want to go through specifically two categories or two types of tactics for getting requests and asks. One that we'll go through is the yes and category. This is a category where you are saying yes to what's being asked of you, but you also want to manage expectations or reset unrealistic expectations. So I'll give you a couple examples. Yes, I can attend, and I'll need to leave by 3 to make another appointment. Or, yes, here's what I can commit to this week to help you with the goals that you have. So you're not turning yourself into a pretzel to do what that other person's asking you to do in the deadline that they're asking you. You're agreeing to do the core ask, request, and you're setting expectations. Whereas the other category is what I call no but. Now, I call it that, but the funny part is we're never going to use the word no, and we're never going to use the word but in these responses. But ultimately, this category is requests where you're not agreeing to do the core ask, you're not agreeing to do the core request. You're going to offer an alternative. You're going to offer another resource that's going to help that person. So, for instance, that's not something that I handle, and here's who can help you. Or that's not in my wheelhouse, but I'm going to connect us to Mary, who can get us what you need. Our policies don't allow X, so I'll share the approved version. So those are two of the categories that we could start to leverage without ever even using the word no.
I love that, and it really speaks to me where in my business we talk about being able to read the room and understanding how people's emotions and feelings are, and by tactfully having a conversation with somebody and leaving them feeling that you are going to participate in whatever it is they want to have you participate in, or you've helped them to solve their problem in a different venue. You've definitely have energized the room rather than creating this unnecessary tension or maybe leaving the situation worse than you found it. So I really like that. Do you have any other tips in that kind of under this heading?
I would say the two that stick out to me is, we want to match our verbals, like what we're saying, with nonverbals. So sometimes it's better, to pick up the phone and let that other person hear the the sincerity in your voice. So just making sure that our body language is matching and that it's landing in the best way. The other tip is fewer words strengthen your message. And what do I mean by that? A lot of us, again, because we do care, we tend to over explain or justify or prove. And you don't have to prove. You have to prioritize. So fewer words strengthen your message. And yes, there's quotes out there that says no is a complete sentence, and I completely agree. But we don't have to over explain, because the more words you use, the less of an impact your message is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's right. That's definitely under the category of less is definitely more. And as I think through the 3 steps, or the 3 parts of this of your talk today, I think it's really practical. It's something that it very intuitively makes sense, especially for as busy as we all are. I'm thinking about the advisors that are either listening to us or watching us today. How can they get started? How really can they get started to master the art?
Yeah, and I have a sheet that, can give some tips, as you'll see. One is just practicing in lower stakes situations. So I always joke, practice at the store. I was recently at a store for the kids. It's a sporting goods store, and the cashier was trying to get me to open up a store credit card because I would save XYZ, and it doesn't take time. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And the old me would have said, no, I can't. I don't have time. The kids are here, and they would have probably had said, no, it's only going to take 30 seconds. But the new me said, oh, thank you. I don't use store credit cards. And literally the cashier couldn't say anything to that because, again, to your point, it doesn't open up, negotiation, doesn't invite, excuses or negotiation. And then maybe preparing some statements is another tip. So if a client's going to ask you to meet them on Fridays, but that day is allocated for administration tasks, maybe expenses, maybe mental health, you can prepare an anchor phrase for those types of requests. So just kind of having something in your back pocket. One is just committing to the process. So commit in little steps. If you really want to try to get better at this, skill, maybe you say, I want to say no to one social event invitation a week, right? Maybe that's something that you can start with. One other tip is, in the moment, don't feel pressured to give an answer, a yes or a no. Buy yourself time. Yes. So you could say, hey, this sounds important to you. I'd like to give this some thought and get back to you tomorrow, right? So not feeling pressure in the moment to respond. You can delegate your no. That's another tip. If you have someone that works on your team, they could also, respond on your behalf based on, maybe it's a social event, an invitation that they're extending to you. And then the final tip I'd say is, you're going to get this sometimes, what we call the pushy askers, right? They don't take no for an answer. They catch you face to face. They want you to respond. They know you're the yes person. And those types of conversations, you can transition those to an electronic form. So again, you might be able to buy yourself a little time and then transition your answer, in electronic format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the person that wants you to bring the lasagna, right? That's in your face. I'll get back. I'll send you an email. Here's what I'd like to do right now. First of all, Cathy, this has been great. I hope all of you watching and listening are motivated from this. Motivated to not only put this in practice, but motivated to be bold and courageous and decisive. Now, we know that everybody out there has important relationships. And if you're like me, my dad used to say, and I know I am, I would say you have to divide your time between your clients, the people you work with, your family, and all of their commitments. So it's really important to protect your time and energy. Now, I've had the opportunity to go through, I won't say how many years of training, but a fair bit of training over my career. The one thing I can tell you is true. When you have this type of training, when you hear this type of information, don't just turn off the podcast or leave the webcast and then go back to what you're doing. I would challenge each of you to take your webinar action sheet or take the thoughts that you've thought about, and in the next 72 hours, not next week, but in the next 72 hours, try it. As Cathy suggested, put it into practice. Give it a shot. And you'll be amazed with how much this will actually transform. Cathy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, not just today, but with one of our groups recently. Do you have any final words for our audience today?
So in your final comments, I couldn't help but hear the be bold, be courageous, be decisive. That's a mantra that our CEO at Lincoln Financial, Ellen Cooper, uses. And I think when you master the art of saying no with your awareness of your values and the identity of the person that you want to be, and you set rules for yourself, so you're not making on the spot decisions, and you have that tactful communication so that you're not damaging your professional relationships and reputation, you absolutely can, again, be more bold, be more courageous, and be more decisive in your decision making. And I think the final thing that I'd say is just remember, you're not rejecting the asker, you're rejecting the ask because it doesn't, align to your values and priorities and unique strengths. So I appreciate being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Cathy, thank you. I hope you can join us again. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule for joining us today for a few minutes for Sales Accelerators. We look forward to seeing you again right here real soon. Take care, everybody.